Apple sells three very expensive bricks: the M2 Pro Mac Mini, the M1 Max, Mac Studio, and the 140-watt charge brick for the MacBook Pro. Now, many of you are torn between these two bricks, especially since the prices start overlapping each other, and for today's video, I wanted to dive into where I think it makes sense to get the M2 Pro Mac Mini and where it makes sense to get the Mac Studio. And yes, I'm messing around with my green screen again. I'm filming in the exact same room as before. Let's begin. So first of all, my initial impressions were very impressed that Apple was finally willing to ship a Pro chip within a Mac Mini. Before, it always got kind of skimmed down basic chips and oftentimes just slightly higher clocked laptop Intel CPUs, but now Apple's laptop CPUs and desktop CPUs are kind of one and the same, and that's a good thing. They're both very fast, both very impressive, and even if it got the M1 Pro chip, I still would have considered that a massive upgrade over what the Mac Mini had just a couple weeks ago. But I think where you need to be careful speccing out an M2 Pro Mac Mini is when you start getting the price unnecessarily high, because while yes, Apple did drop the price of the M2 Mac Mini thanks to some pennies that Timmy saved by cutting out those extra NANDs, because who needs fast read and write speed, right? The Mac Mini has also never been more theoretically expensive than before. You can now spec it to well over $4,500. I can't ever recall a time in the Mac Mini's history, or really any mini product Apple has ever sold, that has gotten that expensive. So you gotta be careful, because I think a lot of people just instantly see higher number and assume that means M2 Pro is faster than every M1 product. And the truth is, even in Apple's own comparison tests, there are a lot of GPU intensive tasks where, because the M1 Max, even the binned version, has a 24-core GPU, that's more individual GPU cores than the M2 Pro non-binned gets. And keep in mind, the cheapest M2 Pro Mac Mini does have a binned CPU and GPU. So if you're not speccing up an extra $300 for that M2 Pro Mac Mini, there's a good chance that a lot of the use cases that you're going to be using your Mac Mini for aren't going to be actually faster than just a Mac Studio. But I get it. The Mac Mini definitely has a lower starting price than the Mac Studio, which is where I want to specify if the regular M2 or M1 Mac Minis aren't good enough for you, you want something with a little bit more performance, or you want those extra two Thunderbolt ports, then I think the base model M2 Pro Mac Mini with no upgrades is still a really compelling option. You know, $1,300, definitely a faster chip than the M1 or M2, definitely faster than the binned M1 Pro, and for some of you, 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage, that's going to be enough and you'll be fine with that. But if you start speccing it up, you know, you're like, hey, I want the non-binned M2 Pro, or you decide I want 32 gigs of RAM, or it's not standard on the Mac Mini, but it is standard on the Mac Studio to get 10 gigabit Ethernet. If you spec that up on the Mac Mini, it is now basically the same price as a Mac Studio, and you're getting, sure, a thinner brick, yay, so it fits a little cleaner on your desktop, but you're not getting an SD card slot anymore, which is kind of annoying if you use those. You're getting 2 fewer USB-C ports, which the Mac Studio is offering, and arguably, in a lot of tasks, a worse performing chip for more money. And you know I had to bring this up because it's one of those videos, but the Mac Studio, it's been out for a while now, which means you can find it certified refurbished from Apple with the full warranty and everything for $1,800, and I'm sure if you go through Amazon, Best Buy, or third party, wherever you are in the world, you'll probably find it even cheaper than that. And frankly, this is the type of product that you really should consider buying secondhand. Some of you guys don't like it when I recommend secondhand laptops or phones and stuff, but the Mac Studio has no display, so you don't need to worry about getting the secondhand product and it has scratches or scuffs on the screen because there's no screen. It has no battery, so you don't need to be concerned about the battery health of that secondhand product. So even if you're buying used on eBay or something, this is the type of product that is likely to have very, very little issues even after heavy use. So I saw some people suggesting that the M2 Pro Mac Mini is like a decoy, or it's meant to trick you into not getting the Mac Studio, or it's a trap or that kind of thing. I personally think the entry-level model is still great for a lot of people, and I wouldn't put it on the Tailosive Tech official don't buy list. I would just be more cautious of once you start speccing it up. If you want a terabyte or 2 terabytes of storage, or you want 32 gigs of RAM, or you want the non non-binned chip. Anything that you spec up higher than that base model, that's when I'd heavily encourage you to just consider getting an M1 Max Studio, because those are a lot cheaper. They have better I/O. They're arguably faster in many circumstances because of that M1 Max chip having more GPU cores, and they've been out for a while, so you can find them for cheaper. So still, both I think are going to be really great options, and frankly, I think there's actually not that many use cases where the M1 or M2 chip isn't going to be fast enough for most people. But if you're a pro, you're really looking for something fast, then either of these Macs is still going to be great and likely sit you somewhere in the $1,500 to $2,000 price range. But I'm just first of all grateful that Apple finally has like really compelling options for the desktop space, and I do mean desktop. I'm not talking about those big giant PCs that you gotta sit on the ground because they're so huge. No, these are fast, compelling computers with a lot of ports and a lot of power that can sit under your monitor and probably get 7 to 10 years of software support, maybe more. And we just didn't really have great desktop options other than all-in-one iMacs, which I'm a fan of, but certainly creates a lot of e-waste when you're ready to retire your old iMac because it's not easily converted into an external monitor again. Whereas you're buying Mac Minis and Mac Studios, you can use your old monitor and update that monitor in the future and then buy the M5 Pro Mac Mini whenever that becomes available and keep using whatever monitor you buy in the next couple years. So it's a good move for the environment, I would say, and just efficiency. But I actually think there's a decent market of people where Mac Studio is a bit too overkill for them, but M2 Pro base model Mac Mini is just right. Like, it's just perfect, saves them a good amount of money, and gives them more performance than what the M2 Mac Mini offers. So what do you guys think? Is it a bit of a trap or a decoy? Should one of these options not exist anymore? Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody on Tailosive Tech Pro supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you all in the next one.